Hey guys, welcome to Willie Creamin's Week 14 Fantasy Football Kickoff Happy Hour. Glad to be back. Very interesting week here with Week 14, guys. We've got obviously the potential for fantasy playoffs, but we've also got it could be the final week before you head into the playoffs for this final week. So, a lot of big things to be able to cover today. I'm going to try to get you guys out of here a little bit early. So let's go ahead and start in here. We've got the Week 14 buys with Arizona and Washington. Not too many players that are real big perennial fantasy players that we have on these teams. Obviously, Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, Sam Howell's been playing decent. Jahan Dotson's a little bit coming into his own, not as much as he was last year, but he's starting to play a little bit better. And then on Arizona's side, we've got Marquise Brown. Obviously, Trey McBride was playing pretty well. Kyler Murray was back and James Conner as well. But no one really major that we're missing in terms of real studs for fantasy. Okay, so first game we've got here with Tampa Bay and Atlanta. So some of the things that we're going to focus on in terms of fantasy here. Atlanta, listen, they're still fighting for a playoff spot. They have a one-game lead in the division, which is good for them, but really isn't that impressive considering how bad this division is. They beat the Bucks the first time around that they played, but they need this one to kind of solidify that lead and really put that stamp on, hey, we're going to be making the playoffs. I can't be the only one wishing here that Atlanta had a different QB on this team. Listen, I've been pitching this all year. I really wish they would go after a guy like Kyler, even Justin Fields. Now, I know some of you will probably scoff at that, and he would need time and might be a project in a new offense, but Justin Fields would instantly make this team a lot better. And I'm not going to say that he's going to get them 5, 6 more wins, but he's at least going to give this team 2 or 3 more wins in this division and give them a much better chance of being able to win games week in and week out. I also have concerns about Arthur Smith as well, whether he's the best coach for this team, but they've just got a lot of weapons here, a lot of tools. I'd love to see them get a quarterback in here that could actually do something with those tools. Maybe you see a guy like, I don't know, Caleb Williams is going to be too high of a price probably for Atlanta, but I'd love to see them take a stab at a guy like that. Um, Now in terms of guys that I'd be starting in terms of fantasy, listen, Mike Evans, he's just been too solid lately. And guys, like, I do not want to be on the bad side of luck when it comes to this dude. We all remember week 16 last year and his 55-point game in the playoffs. That was absolutely crushing. And I saw that happen in too many of the leagues that I was in. I don't want to be a bearer of bad news here and on the bad side of luck for him. I picked him up in my guillotine league because I'd rather have him stashed on my bench when I'm running guys out there like Tyreek, AJ Brown, Keenan Allen, rather than let him on someone else's team and see him pop off for 3, 4 touchdowns in a game. So Rashad White, listen, he didn't play well the last time they played against Atlanta, but they've given up over 100 yards in 4 out of their last 5 games. And I think that bodes very well for the way Rashad White runs the ball, but I also think he's going to be involved in the passing game too. And he's the guy that's going to get the opportunities. There's no one else. And we had said this at the beginning of the year. Go back and look. Beginning of the year, we said there's no one else in this backfield they're going to be giving touches to. Very similar. Rashad White's the only dude that's getting the majority of the touches here. So really like him this week. Another guy that I'm going to be starting, except in my guillotine league, is Bijan Robinson. Listen, Tampa Bay's been stout against the run in some games, but they've also been blown out in 3 out of the last 5 games in the ground. I'm riding Bijan with the talent, right? Like this guy's a playmaker not only on the ground, but also in the passing game too. You got to be able to throw him in there in your lineups. Some of the guys that I'm going to be fading this week, listen, Chris Godwin, and it pains me to say that, like he's been somewhat consistent. He has 5 catches in 6 out of his last 7 games, but the one touchdown just sucks. Like that does not feel good. And in fantasy, if you're going to talk about a make or break week, you got to get that guy that gets that touchdown. He's just not that dude right now. So Kyle Pitts and Drake London, listen, I know some people are riding Drake London hard this week saying that, oh, yeah, he's going to pop off against Tampa Bay. I'm going to be on the other side of that. I'm just, they look who he's got throwing the ball to him. You just can't trust Desmond Ritter or Tyler Heineke. Like you see either one of those guys out there, and it's just scary. It really is. Like you just don't want either one of them throwing him the ball. They need a quarterback here that's going to be able to throw the rock to him and make it actually get there. All right, let's move on to the next game. We got Detroit at Chicago. So interesting game because CJ Gardner Johnson comes back, right? He's designated to return. Detroit couldn't be in more need of his health. Like, look at the last few games that they've had. Just in their last four games, these are the points they've given up: 28, 29, 26, and 38. That is absolutely terrible. They need this guy like nobody's business. I'm telling you, he's going to make a difference when he comes back. The Bears, listen, they just rattled off two wins in their last three games. Granted, it was against Carolina and Minnesota. Now, I thought Minnesota. I was in in the belief train that Minnesota was a little bit better, but they've kind of shown the last few weeks that maybe they weren't as good as we thought they initially were with Dobbs there. But again, Chicago still gets those wins. It was just 3 weeks ago where Chicago almost won this game against Detroit. So don't forget about that. Like, they know they can hang in this game. In terms of guys I'm starting in fantasy, Fields, listen, I just don't think the defensive struggles are fixed with Detroit. And Fields just has too much upside. Listen, I've got better options in some of my leagues, so I've got him on my bench. But if you've got him and you don't have a better option, you have to roll him out there. This is a guy that could put up 40 points in a game easy for you. So another thing I'm looking at here, we've got DJ Moore because he's the only playmaker I trust on this offense besides Fields. It really is true. Like, I know some people floating the idea of Roshan Johnson out there. He's coming into his own. I get that. DJ Moore is the only other guy that I trust in this particular game. Goff, listen, he should bounce back from his 3 interception game last time. He should have a solid game against the Bears here. I just don't see him going out there and throwing 3 picks again unless the Bears are able to really get a ton of pressure on him. I think he's a smart quarterback. I think he's going to rebound this game. Amon-Ra, listen, he's a must start every week, except in my guillotine league. I just have better options than him. But listen, trust me, it pains me to explain this. Amon-Ra has gotten me there this year. He is that consistent dude. I'm a big believer in him, and I love watching this guy play week in and week out. It pains me to put him on the bench. Laporta, listen, he's a must start every week too. He's really put himself in the top 3 at tight end category. Yeah, Andrews goes down and stuff, but Laporta statistically has been up there with the best tight ends. So I really do appreciate like what they've been able to do and how they've been able to play this year. So all right. Montgomery, listen, he's a lock every week. 12 carries in each of the past 4 weeks. Like, he's getting solid opportunities since he came back. He looks very good. And I mean, when he's got the ball in his hands, you feel confident. So running behind this line, I think he's been very effective this year. And I really like his opportunities this game. Same thing with Gibbs, man. There's just too much talent. And again, I said this earlier in the season when we were talking about Detroit. Like, they had 5 guys every single week that you can bank on starting. I cannot remember the last time we'd ever mentioned Detroit with 5 guys in fantasy every single week. But they've had 5 guys every week, except the weeks that Montgomery was hurt. But like, they've had 5 guys every single week that you can count on to deliver fantasy points week in and week out for you. Some of the guys I'm fading: Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, Cole Kmet. Listen, I thought about running Cole Kmet out there as a sleeper pick, but I just, it's not my thing right now. I don't trust him this particular game. All right, moving on here. We've got Indy at Cincinnati. Listen, both teams are riding high with overtime wins. I really do like uh, uh, the way that Cincinnati was able to win that game last week. I think it was very important. And Indy as well, like against Tennessee. Tennessee's a team that is going to take games off of people, and we'll get to that in a little bit later today. But Tennessee plays teams tough, and they're trying to play spoiler. It's the end of the season, 4 weeks left. They want to be able to, I'm sorry, 5 weeks left, including this week. They want to make sure that they can play teams tough, try to snag a game off someone, try to ruin some playoff hopes for teams. Don't forget, there's still guys on that team that are good players. They could be playing for contracts this offseason, and they want to make sure that they're still getting theirs out there. Now, listen, Indianapolis, they're still without JT, so they're going to be rolling Zach Moss out there. Some of the guys I'm starting in fantasy, listen, Joe Mixon, he had a great game last week. There's no reason to believe it won't continue this week. They're leaning on him heavily, and I think it shows. Jamar Chase, listen, I was wrong about this. A few weeks ago, I said, listen, I'm not trusting Jamar Chase the next few weeks at least. It's really, they've been able to find ways to still get him the ball and make him become very effective. I think he had, what, a 75-yard touchdown last week? Like, it just, getting the ball in his hands and letting him run with it. So I really think he's a good start week in and week out now. So especially without Burrow, that was the biggest. That's the reason I was the biggest skeptic about it. But he's getting fed, so got to roll him out there. Michael Pittman now. This pains me because I have not been a Michael Pittman guy. I don't like him. I don't like the way he plays, all of that stuff. Listen, it's not that I don't like him as a player. I just don't like him in terms of fantasy. So let's make that clear, clear divide right there. I think he's a great guy, great teammate, all of that stuff. But when it comes to fantasy, not a guy I really want on my team. But look at the stats. The stats don't lie. 9 out of 12 games, he's had 8 receptions. That's ridiculous. Find any guy in the NFL this year that's had at least 8 receptions in 9 out of 12 games. I guarantee you won't find many. If maybe Keenan Allen, or maybe Amon Ra, who I'm an owner of in some of my leagues, but like you're not going to find many guys out there that are that dominant in terms of targets week in and week out. So really like it. Listen, it's not for massive yardage, but this guy exactly what you want in fantasy, and I was wrong about him. It's okay. We can admit when we're wrong. So some of the guys I'm fading. Now listen, just remember JT is out. Higgins, I'm just not high on him the rest of the year, to be honest. I feel like he's banged up. He's going to be leaving in the offseason. I think they're going to try to get some of the other guys in the mix because they're not making the playoffs this year. Zach Moss, listen, just not against Cincinnati. I feel like he's a good player. He steps in and does a really good job when JT's not there, but just not this week against Cincinnati. All right. So let's move on here. So we've got Jacksonville at Cleveland. So this game, now listen, both teams are coming off some pretty tough losses. The big story here is, what does Lawrence look like when he plays? And yes, he's going to be active. He hasn't been practicing almost all week. The high ankle sprains are really tough. Like, we remember what Patrick Mahomes looked like last year. It was not good. He was battling that all the way. Even in the Super Bowl, you saw it too. He just was not himself. It's a very difficult injury to deal with in season and still play at peak performance. So, listen, Cleveland, their playoff hopes might be dwindling. Too many teams on the rise, and they just aren't one of them, right? Like, they're floating, I think, Joe Flacco out there today. It just, I mean, they just don't look great. Right, they've got a good defense, but they just haven't played well the last few weeks, and unfortunately, like, they're on the bad end of luck when it comes to making the playoffs. There's just too many good teams like Denver, Houston, Indy, those teams that are rising up. Cleveland's just, they're going to be falling down. So some of the guys I'm starting in fantasy, listen, Etienne, I've kind of been on him all year. I know a lot of guys are as well, but he is banged up right now. So just keep that in mind. Like, he's battling through that rib injury. I know he's still putting up good statistical performances in fantasy, but just keep in mind he is a little banged up. Cooper, listen, with Joe Flacco getting the start, he's going to try to air it out. I think it's definitely going to be a good thing. Oh, man, Vash, thank you so much for showing. I really appreciate it, bro. I had to restart the stream. I was having some technical issues at the beginning, but we are here. Thank you so much for showing up, man. I really appreciate it. Let's see here. Some of the guys I'm fading this week. Listen, Christian Kirk hit IR this week. Definitely. I mean, you should know this if you're on any of the major sports platforms. They're going to mention that, obviously he went on IR. Maybe you float Zay Jones out there instead, but I just, with Lawrence being banged up, I just don't know what type of guy we're getting. It's hard to trust him. Same thing goes for Calvin Ridley. Like, I feel like Ridley's going to see more production, but again, how good is Trevor Lawrence out there? Does he get hit hard once by Myles Garrett and then they take him out? Like, what are we going to see out of that? So Jerome Ford too, I'm not high on him this week. It just, for me, I just don't feel like he's going to be running the ball that well against this Jacksonville defense. So all right, let's move on real quick here. We got Carolina and New Orleans. Now listen, the Saints appear to be a playoff team. until they just can't figure out how to keep Derek Carr healthy and on the field. After the season, I guarantee we are going to hear that this guy was nursing like 4 to 5 injuries. I know I read it on Twitter the other day, like all the times that he's been knocked out of games this year with injuries, and then like all of a sudden he's healthy the next week. Like this guy is very tough. I hope no one out there questions his, like his toughness or anything like that. This guy loves the game of football, will do whatever he can in any locker room he's in to try to make it on the field and try to give his team a chance to win. I mean, he's a tough son of a gun. They can't protect him properly. And it's sad for him because I feel like I remember years ago when the Raiders were actually pretty good that one year. He was playing at an MVP caliber level. He breaks his leg. They were going to be the number one seed that year. All of a sudden, they're no longer the number one seed. The Patriots slip in and then had like a cakewalk to the Super Bowl that year. And it really was so depressing because I felt like that was the best year that they stood a chance at really not only making the playoffs, but actually making a push in the playoffs. And every year it's just been him trying to claw back to that point, and there's just been too many mistakes, too many things haven't gone right. I think there's too much changeover in terms of coaching. He had the whole Antonio Brown incident where like they couldn't get on the same page and he didn't even play a game for them. Like there was just too much. I feel bad for a guy like that, and especially the way he was asked to exit Las Vegas. It was sad. It really was. Like that guy deserves much better than the way he was treated. I mean, Carolina, listen, they're still vying for the number one pick, even though it's not theirs. Right? They've got to give it to the Bears. But they are coachless with Frank Reich getting fired, and I don't know if this team has enough direction to be able to really take a game off of New Orleans this week. So some of the guys I'm starting, listen, Olave's battling that illness, but he's going to play. I think he's got like the flu, something like that. But listen, he's tough. He's going to figure out a way through it. I just don't know how effective he's going to be, but he's too good not to start him, right? And if Derek Carr is going to be out there, he's going to be trying to feed him as well. Alvin Kamara is going to have a ridiculous game. Let me just be the first to say that. First of all, they're playing against Carolina. Secondly, Derek Carr with him being banged up, he's going to be dumping off to the running back a lot. And Kamara is just, I have to say, he's the best running back in the NFL when it comes to them dumping off to him. He is just, that is what his game is about. He's an expert at it, and he knows exactly how to play it perfectly. So he's going to have not only has he had an incredible year, he's going to have an incredible game as well. And he's actually made a lot of people, a lot of fantasy owners forget that he was even gone the first 3 weeks of the season. Like, don't forget he was suspended for the first 3 games. He came in and just lit the world on fire and has been playing lights out ever since. Show me a bad game that he's had. I mean, his team's gotten their ass kicked a few times, but really, like, he's played well all season. Really has. Everyone else I'm fading. Like there's no one else on either of these teams that I'm even considering starting. So all right, moving on. We got Houston at the Jets. Now, Houston, listen, they've won 4 out of their last 5. The Jets, they've lost 5 straight. I mean, it's been a spiral. Right now, like the smart move is not to bring Aaron Rodgers back. I know they want to do that. Quick pause, real quick. I just wanted to mention something about the previous game because I think it's really important. And I feel like ESPN did a very shitty job of mentioning it. Hayden Hurst, the tight end for Carolina, his dad posted on Twitter that he's suffering from like retrograde amnesia from a hit that he sustained in a football game. Like, that's one of the most fucked up things I've ever heard. And it's so sad. And the NFL has just stayed quiet on this. They haven't come out, they haven't really said anything. Great that ESPN posted an article and kind of tucked it in the sports section. But like, dude, that's so sad. Like it really is. Like this is a guy, we're not talking about concussions and stuff like that. Like this guy's forgetting stuff because of a hit he sustained 2 weeks prior. Like it's something that doesn't get mentioned, and I didn't want to skip over that game without at least bringing it up because it's something that really bothers me about the NFL is it seems like sometimes they try to shy away from this stuff until it's thrown directly in their face, and then they're like, "Oh, well, we want to do something about it." Like, get that guy some help. Seriously, like it just he may not come back to football. I know they're saying like he'll recover from it and stuff, but just a very sad situation. Something that really just really boils my blood thinking about that. So Again, let's move on from that. I don't want to depress anyone or anything like that. But Houston at the Jets, obviously, like talking about guys coming back from injury and stuff, I just don't think Rodgers coming back is a smart move. Like they're going to have a top 10 pick in the draft next year if things continue the way they are. Like and they said they're going to make a serious attempt at Devontae. Like that's a no-brainer. They should try to bring him in. Vegas is saying they're not going to let go of him, but listen, there's a price for everybody. And really what Vegas needs is a complete rebuild. They should get rid of the high-priced veterans that they have, Devontae, Jacobs, Max Crosby. And listen, I love Max Crosby. He's going to be a savage somewhere. I love his story, but like let those guys free and rebuild that organization with a new head coach. That's what they need. So Devontae could be in New York next year. Houston, listen, their time is right now. They may be the best team in the league and we don't know it. Right, like Stroud has this team vibing and like feeling like they can win no matter what the odds are and what the score is and who they're playing against. Now, I'm not going to say they're a better team than San Francisco. I'm not going to do that. But no team in the NFL, especially the AFC, right? Because they have to go through the AFC to get to the Super Bowl. No team in the AFC wants to play this team in the playoffs. That is, Stroud is just, he's got that uncanny confidence that rookies sometimes possess that you have to it's not something you can teach to a veteran when they finally get there, right? Like guys that have been in the league for 5 years, you can't teach them when they get to the playoffs like hey, this is how you're supposed to act. CJ Stroud is that dude that understands. He's played at a big college program. He knows exactly what he needs to do in order to be able to win football games. Yes, him losing Tank Dell's a big deal. I really do get that. But this guy knows how to make playmakers out of all the guys around him. He's got like that kind of Michael Jordan effect on people, and it's very impressive. So this week, listen, I'm starting Nico Collins definitely. I mean, Stroud has to go somewhere with the ball. It's definitely going to be Nico. I would be shocked if he didn't end the game with 8 catches, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Now, listen, I know this Jets defense is good, but Stroud's going to find a way to get him the ball. I'm actually fading a few of these guys. Listen, Stroud this week, just because it's the Jets defense, I don't think he's going to have a monster game. Do I think Nico Collins will? Yes, because they need to push the ball down the field. I'm just not that confident that Stroud's going to have a monster game against this defense. So I'm fading him this week against a solid Jets unit. Don't forget, Dalton Schultz is out. Brevin Jordan, I ended up picking him up in a league. He's getting the start, and I just think he's got the opportunity to actually play decently against this Jets defense and has a chance to maybe score a touchdown or at least get some 4 or 5 catches in the game and put up some solid tight end points. Garrett Wilson, listen, I'm fading him. They can't figure out a way to get this guy the ball with any sort of consistency. I feel bad for him because like you see exactly what he went through last year and the numbers that he put up. He's nowhere near that this year. And he just knows that if Rodgers was there, like this is a guy we're looking at that probably would have 16, 17 touchdowns at this point. Like, and I'm not even bullshitting when I say that. Like, they're good enough, him and Rodgers and their rapport, like they could have had that this year if Rodgers wasn't hurt. So another guy I'm fading this week, Brees Hall. Listen, he might be the only bright spot on this Jets offense besides Garrett Wilson, right? But he missed practice this week with an ankle injury. I know he's playing. I'm just not high on him being banged up and going out there and producing this week. All right. So we got the Rams at the Ravens. So this game in particular, oh man, oh icy hypebeast, what do we got here? Hey man, should I start Cup or Ridley full PPR? Listen, dude, I would definitely say Ridley, and the only reason I'm going to say that this week is because, listen, I'm a big Cooper Cup fan, but with Ridley, with Kirk being on IR, I just think Ridley's going to have a better chance. Now, the Ravens defense is very good. If you remember the way they've played some of these NFC teams that are very good, you look at Detroit and Seattle, what they did to them, they actually absolutely demolished them. I just am not sure the Rams have enough on offense to be able to compete with the Ravens. And I think Ridley honestly is the better play. If you look at the way they've been scheming him the last few weeks, he's no longer running these deep posts down the field. Like oh, okay, you just beat this defender and run 60 yards deep and we'll toss you the ball. He's running like these like 15 yards and out post slants across, where he's able to create that separation from the defender and able to get that distance on them, and then he gets the ball and is able to run a good extra 15, 20 yards from there. So I really think if they're able to do that, I think Lawrence is going to have enough in him this week to be able to get him the ball at least a few times. I wouldn't be shocked if you saw Ridley end the game with, 5 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. I definitely think he's a better play this week than Cup. The Ravens are smart, man. They know that Cup and Nakua are the two guys that have the chance of blowing up that defense. They're not going to let that happen. And I also think that the Ravens are going to get a ton of pressure on Matt Stafford this week. I think it's going to be a very, very difficult for them to be able to keep him upright. So that's my pitch on it, man. I would definitely be going Ridley this week if I were you. All right. So, and as we're talking about that, let's go ahead and break this game down, right? So, the Rams, listen, they won their last 3 games. The Ravens, they've won 4 out of 5. They lead the AFC, right? So they just took over from the Chiefs with the Chiefs kind of losing there. So, I think the Ravens are going to be in the driver's seat for the first round bye. Listen, I just, again, I'm not sure, as I mentioned here, as I'm going through my notes, I'm not sure I like these Rams pass catchers against this Baltimore defense. Baltimore, listen, they've shown, again, like I had mentioned, no respect for NFC teams, i.e. Detroit, Seattle. Like they don't care about NFC teams, and they will absolutely smash them given the opportunity. And right now, like I know many people don't know this because they don't really think of Baltimore. Yeah, we talk about their defense and stuff, how good they are on offense, all of that stuff. We don't really think of them as the top defense in the league. They are right now. They've given up 187 points. So they've given up the fewest points of any team in the league. I just don't see them losing control and losing a grasp on that this week against the Rams. Not as we're 13 weeks into the season. Just don't see it happening. Some of the questions I have, like, does Lamar continue to dominate? He somehow ended up at the bottom of the MVP race. Like, we started talking about this past week where, like, Purdy all of a sudden elevated to the top of the MVP list, jumped over Dak and Jalen Hurts, which I think right now Dak should be the front runner for that. But, like, they're not even mentioning Lamar anymore. And I think honestly that bodes very well for him because he doesn't care about an MVP. He's already gotten that. What he cares about is getting a Super Bowl ring. I just My only concern for the Ravens and Lamar is how he's going to be tested without Mark Andrews. Now I know Isaiah Likely, he's a competent fill-in. I understand that. He's pretty good. I like him, but my issue is that I just don't think he's the athlete and provides the energy that Mark Andrews does week in and week out. So I have concerns about that. Now listen, in fantasy, I'm still starting Lamar. You have to. He's that guy that can go up and put up 40 points on any given week. You just don't know. Like he could take off at any point and scamper for an 80-yard touchdown. You have to have him in your lineup unless you really have a good competent pass catcher. But if you have Lamar on your team, there's a good chance you don't have a guy like Hurts or Dak or Purdy on your team as well. It's not common that you would have that. So really, I'm running Lamar out there. Again, like I had mentioned before, guys, I'm fading Stafford, Cup, Nakua, Higbee. He's going to be doubtful for this game, so I wouldn't be really starting him anyways. But I just I'm going to say a thing because I think it should be said. I could be wrong, and Baltimore goes out there and absolutely gets their shit pushed in big time. It's just not what we've seen. I'm going to judge it off 13 games of experience and what we've seen this year. And like that has not been this team in any game so far this year. So I really think they continue to hold true on that mantra of we play good defense. Our offense will win us the game. We'll run the ball well. And I think they're going to create havoc for Stafford and these pass catchers in LA. All right, let's move on here. We've got Minnesota at Las Vegas. So now, listen, we talked a little bit about Vegas before and the way I kind of feel about them. But listen, Vegas in their last five, they've lost three games that they should have lost, and they've won two games they should have won. So what the fuck does this mean? Like it really, like it just means that like this team still sucks. Unfortunately, they need a little bit of revenge with some great coaching. Like that's really what they need. I mean, maybe Pierce is that guy, maybe not. I don't know. I really like Antonio Pierce. I think he was an awesome player. I hope he's going to be a good coach. I hope they give him a fair shot. I think there's other guys in the NFL that deserve a shot too, that are coaching coordinators at multiple teams. But maybe Pierce is that guy that they decide to bring back and keep him in the building because the last few coaches that seemed like they were the guy, Pistachia, all these guys, like they end up just kicking him to the curb, and it's like, oh well, you just lost your whole culture doing that. So maybe they hang around Pierce and they bring him back in, and he's able to build a team. The Vikings, listen, they need to turn things around, and it starts with the return of King JJ. Now this week, big freaking week because Justin Jefferson's coming back. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means a lot because the head coach, O'Connell, said that they are going to put the quarterback in there that maximizes his talent. So they are already letting you know we are going to feed this dude the rock as many times as we possibly can. We are going to give him opportunities. What does this do for the rest of the guys on this team? Well, it makes them better too. Right, Hawkinson, Addison, even Madison and Chandler, it makes them better too. Now in this game, I don't know what that says really because I want to see it in person first. So some of the guys that I'm going to be starting, listen, JJ, Hawkinson, Devontae, Josh Jacobs, I feel like you kind of have to roll those guys out there. Some of the guys I'm fading, Madison, Chandler, Addison, and Myers, right? Like they're just, it's not that I don't believe in them. I just don't like them in this game. And one last thing about Minnesota. Listen, losing to Chicago was just bad optics, right? Like it doesn't pass the eye test for me that this is a good team, but they need to get it figured out, right? If JJ being there is a that big of a boost that they can win all those games, great. I really like the team we saw last year. And just a side note, I really hope they bring back Kirk Cousins next year. I don't think they're going to, but I really want to see him back in purple and gold again. I really do. All right. So this game, very interesting. I thought I was having deja vu here. Now, listen, Seattle at San Francisco. Seattle's dropped four out of its last five. This team started the season 5-2. Now they're 6-6. Like, this is the problem. Next up, things get worse for them. And they're going to get worse again before they get better. So they play San Francisco this week. They play Philly next week, and before playing Tennessee, Pittsburgh, and Arizona. So Tennessee, listen, they like to play spoiler and stuff. Pittsburgh, not a team I really want to play against if I need a win. They always seem to keep the game close. It's always low scoring. Yeah, I know the Patriots ended up getting a win over them, but like, I just, they're not a team I really want to play against. If I really need a win, that team always seems to show up. And TJ Watt is a game wrecker, so you never know how that defense is going to ruin things for you. So I just am not confident Seattle's going to make the playoffs. They're banged up all over this team. Like, yeah, DK Metcalf had his monster game last week. I don't expect a repeat of that. San Francisco, meanwhile, I mean, they just got over the hump with beating Philly. They're in the driver's seat. And like really, when I say that, they need Philly to lose more games. They may get their wish this week, but they just have a tricky job here, right? They need to beat Seattle badly enough that they take out their frustration, like so that Seattle will take out their frustration next week on Philly, but not beat them so bad that like they can't beat Philly, right? So it's going to be kind of tough. Now, I don't see them even coming close to winning this game. They're already unsure if Gino's going to play. They need to see after pregame warmups if he's going to be out there. I don't know if that's going to. I just don't know. I don't think he's going to be the guy that. If he doesn't look good, they're not putting him out there. Put it that way. So, guys, I'm starting CMC and Debo. That's it. Now, listen, Purdy may be a good start this week. Just not my cup of tea. I'm fading him this week. I think Seattle does have a decent secondary, and I think they could force him into making mistakes this week. And it's really tough to beat a divisional opponent twice. They always play tougher the next time, and that game the first time, it was brutal. So I think Seattle does keep it a little bit closer, and I think they play pretty kind of tough here. So I'm also fading Kittle, Ayuk, Metcalf, Lockett, Gino definitely, Charbonnet and Walker too. Like really everyone in this game I'm fading besides CMC and Debo. I think those two will have good games, but everyone else, yeah, I'm not touching them this week. All right, let's crack open here. We got Buffalo at Kansas City. Listen, Buffalo, they've lost 3 out of 5. Kansas City 2, right? Like it just it's amazing how differently we can look at these two teams and we're like, okay, well, they've lost 3 out of 5, so they're equal, right? Wrong. I mean, one of these teams is 6-6, the other's 8-4, so that matters, right? Kansas City needs to bounce back from that Green Bay loss, which was just fucking horrendous, right? Like they just not only did they not look good, but honestly, it's been like a catch 22 every week with them. You literally don't know what you're going to get from this Kansas City team, and it's sad that we have to consider whether Taylor Swift's at the game or not as to how they're going to play. I'm a realist in understanding that has nothing to do with how those guys play on the field, but I feel like that's getting lumped in with like, okay, let's compare that with injuries and statistics and what guys play, what coverages and who's going to be on who. Like I feel like that's a factor that gets figured into to these games, and they're actually supporting it with data, which is kind of scary. Now Buffalo, like they might even be more of a catch 22 than Kansas City because this team looks really solid one week and the next week they just drop a dud. I don't know a way to explain either one of these teams. Well, Kansas City a little bit more, and we'll get into that in a second here. But this week, in terms of starters that I have, listen, Mahomes, Allen, Diggs, and Kelsey. Those are the guys that I feel comfortable starting. In terms of fades, listen, Pacheco's out. I think he's going to hit IR. I'm still not starting Hilaire or any Kansas City running back this week. I'm just not doing it. And basically, I'm fading the rest of the lot. Everybody else, Gabe Davis, yeah, dude, like catch balls or don't. Like you catch like 5 one week and get a touchdown, and then like the next 4 weeks you go without a catch. Like I don't get it, man. So it's my hope in the offseason that Kansas City decides to clean house in the wide receiver department, and gets Kelsey some fucking help besides Taylor Swift. I mean, this dude really needs some help of people to play beside him because he's just not getting it right now. So, all right, let's move on here. We got Denver at the Chargers. Listen, only a few more that we got to bang through, and then I'll let you guys go here. So, listen, I'm begging for the Chargers to lose this game, and the rest of the ones they play, really. Like, just fire Brandon Staley and let's find a new coach. Whether that's Belichick getting traded out there, it just doesn't matter. It's just been an absolute waste of a year for me with some epic talent on this team on both sides of the ball. Like seeing Bosa get hurt, that's just crushing. Seeing Mike Williams get hurt early. I realize injuries, it doesn't matter who's coaching, like those are going to happen. But like this team just seems to suck way too much. And they have all-stars on this team. It just does not make sense to me. I feel like Belichick would have this team with at least 8 wins. And especially in a down year with Kansas City, like where they haven't been playing that well, this is the year you needed to capitalize on, Brandon Staley. This was the year where you needed to go out there and win 10 games and lead the AFC. And they're not doing it. So listen, Denver, they're on the rise. And I know this is bad for a lot of people, but for me, it's really not. Listen, they lost to Houston, but Houston's a good football team, and we talked about them before. Russ is cooking. Like Houston was just making plays, and they ended up winning the game because of it. But it's not Russell Wilson's fault, and I just would love to see Denver make the playoffs because so many people would just shut the fuck up about them and stop trying to tear down this team after like they had 1 month of football where they played poorly. Yeah, they gave up 70 something points in a game. I get that, but like none of those teams are relevant now, right? Like all of the teams that sucked at the beginning usually still suck now, right? Look at the standings. That's basically the way it is. Some of the teams that were good at the beginning have started to suck as well. But Denver seemed to be really bad at the beginning, and they're the only team that seems to be quite good now. They're going to make the playoffs. They're primed to be able to do it, and I definitely think they're going to move through and make the playoffs. They will beat the Chargers in this game. Watch this. So, some of the guys I'm starting, listen, Russ, Sutton, Williams, definitely. Herbert, I mean, he just needs like Kellen Moore isn't enough. He is enough as an offensive coordinator. They need a head coach, a real head coach, and I really think it would allow Kellen Moore to flourish with this offense. Eckler definitely, and then Keenan Allen. Like he had a down game last week, which was a little disappointing, but like this dude's a stud. He he's quietly been the best receiver in the NFL this year, and I know a lot of people are upset about that because of Tyreek Hill and stuff. I get that, but like you could make the argument that Keenan Allen's been the best. You really could. Some of the guys I'm fading, listen, Jerry Judy, Quentin Johnston, I feel like they need to be, especially this week. All right, let's move on. So we got Philly at Dallas. So this is an interesting game because I talked about this with my buddy Al on the podcast earlier this week. We're all a little uncertain of how this game's going to play out, right? Like, there's a lot at stake here. Philly got their asses handed to them last week by San Francisco. They're going to be looking to prove that they can rebound from that. Dallas, listen, they smell blood in the water. They're extremely good at home. I think they're like 17-1 in their last 18 games at home. Like, they just don't lose at home. But like I had mentioned, there's a lot at stake here, right? If Philly loses, they're going to be tied in the division with Dallas, right? And they will have split those divisional games with Dallas. If Dallas wins, in that scenario where Philly loses, obviously Dallas would win. That means they have the potential of a home game for them. And they haven't had that thought in their head for the last few months. So now they're starting to play a lot better. Yeah, their defense is still a little suspect. I'm a little concerned about that. They're giving up way too many points. Deron Bland's been a freak this year. He's got more touchdowns than some. I mean, I think up until a few weeks ago, he had more touchdowns in terms of pick sixes than Pittsburgh's offense, which was insane. But I think Dallas is playing better as a team. So let's see what ends up happening. Listen, guys, I'm starting this week. Jalen Hurts. Listen, you have to. This guy, he's been responsible for at least 2 touchdowns in every single game except week 1 this season. Every single game, at least 2 touchdowns, sometimes more, but only once was he less than that. So, like, people can mention Purdy all day for MVP. I'm sticking with Hurts or Dak. That leads me to my second guy, right? That I'm starting. Dak. Definitely you have to start this guy. Like no one has been playing the quarterback position better the last arguably 2 months of football than Dak Prescott. He's been unbelievable and no one can deny it. And I know the world listens to Stephen A. Smith. Stop doing that. The guy's all about sound bites and all about blah and blabbing. Guys, Dak Prescott has been incredible the last 2 months of the season. People need to get off his back. I think they just need to. Listen, this defense in Philly is ripe for the picking too. Like their front seven is legit. Don't get me wrong. They know how to be able to get after the quarterback, but that's it. Their secondary does not get after the quarterback. Their secondary doesn't really cover people either. So that's really good. And when your back end is having trouble, Dak's going to exploit a lot of this. So listen, Pollard, I might regret having him in here. I saw a stat that like Zeke Elliott has scored more points in a single game than Tony Pollard has all year. I don't really care about that too much, right? Like it's been one game. Pollard's been the better back for the majority of the season, but whatever. So I just think he has potential in the passing game. I think that elevates him. So I'm going to start him this week. I feel like it's too good of a premier matchup. They're going to try to ride him and give him a shot. So CD and AJ, listen, you'd be hard pressed to find 2 better receivers in the game. Did I just say that before? Yeah, I did. We were talking about Keenan and Tyreek, right? Those were the other 2. Like these 4 receivers have been ridiculous this year. They really have. They put on a show for us. We're undeserving. We don't deserve it, right? But listen, they've all played very well. These 2 are going to show up in this game in a big way, and I think you're going to see that. So Devonta Smith, listen, you have to play him too. If Bland is somehow able to shut down AJ, Devonta could pop off. One guy I'm going to add to this, actually, we'll jump in that in a second. Listen, guys, I'm fading Goddard, Swift, Ferguson. Listen, it's not that I don't like them. It's just that in this matchup, in this particular setting, I just don't. I'm not starting him this week. Sneaky start could be Brandon Cooks. Listen, he's been on a tear lately, and like teams do not want this guy getting any hotter. I mean, it really could be lethal come playoff time. The way they're incorporating him in the offense now, they're like, oh yeah, we've got this guy that's gotten 1,000 yards with every team he's ever played with in every season. Maybe we should start using him more, and they are, and he's actually lighting it up. So Brandon Cooks could be a great start for you this week. All right. Tennessee at Miami. So this game, listen, it's the haves and the have-nots, or the have-nots and the haves, I guess you would say for this. But listen, Tennessee, as I mentioned before, they like to play spoiler, especially in this game. I don't really see it, but there's an opportunity for it. Let me explain how. So like Miami, they we already know so much about them, right? They've got all the firepower, all of that. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. Tennessee's got a decent defense in terms of being able to stop the run. They've got Tua and Tyreek, and that's what makes this offense great. I mean, Jalen Waddle, wonderful. I get that, but like Tua and Tyreek are just, you could be down 3 touchdowns and they could come back. Like it's possible. We saw it against Carolina. It looked like they were playing, against seventh graders out there. It was kind of ridiculous. But in this game in particular, I expect a lot out of Derrick Henry. Like if Tennessee can keep this close, keep the game somewhat close, it's going to be because of Mr. December. And like this guy, all of a sudden it starts snowing out, starts getting cold up in places like New England and Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Philly. And like this guy is just like, oh, it's people don't want to tackle. They don't want to hit that hard. They don't want to wrap up. They don't want to finish plays. Well, that's where this guy excels. So I know they're playing in Miami. I get that. But like this guy, it's just about the time of year. It doesn't really matter the location. It's later in the season now. People are banged up. People are hurt. They're not playing like they were in September necessarily. Some of them may be playing better, but some of them are nursing injuries. And Derrick Henry just exposes that at this time of year. So I really like Henry this week. Some of the starts I've got, obviously Henry, Tua, Reek, Waddle. Those are my starts there. In terms of guys I'm fading, A-Chain, Mostert, A-Chan, Mostert, and Hopkins. I don't know. I don't trust Levis to be able to do anything. And yeah. All right. Let's move on. Last game we've got here. So Green Bay at the Giants. Now listen, Green Bay's riding that hot win over Kansas City. He's getting hot at the right time. And like the Packers actually have a legitimate shot at the playoffs. Let me explain what I don't like. Jaire Alexander, quoted as saying they would win out. Now listen, why don't you get back on the field first, bro? And like, okay, this is a guy saying that from his armchair to a guy that, gets paid millions to be able to cover guys like Justin Jefferson and Amon Ra and DJ Moore and like those guys, right? But like, dude, you played 5 games this year. Shut up. You claim to be the best one-on-one defender in the league. Like there's plenty of dudes playing at that level that could say that, and they aren't talking shit. Just sit down, get healthy, and come back. We don't need to hear all these sound bites from you about your team and stuff like that. There's guys on your team that are out there playing right now. Let them do the talking. They're the ones that are playing, right? So, okay, off my pedestal. Giants, listen, it's been a tough season for them all the way around, but it seems like they're really rallying around DeVito, and that could be something. I don't know. Some of the guys I'm starting for this game, listen, Jaden Reed, he's been awesome for fantasy this year for me. He was one of my guys, and like I've kind of ridden him all year, and people doubted him, and I'm kind of happy about that because I reap the benefits of it. But Jordan Love, Saquon, like I think they'll both be decent starts today. Saquon just because he keeps getting fed all the time. So guys I'm fading, listen, Musgrave, Watson, Aaron Jones. Watson, like I don't even know if he's going to be playing. Like this guy, I don't know. It bothers me when people say he's like a number one wide receiver. I don't know why I've got so much beef with the Packers and stuff. I like most of the guys that play, and I'm an AJ Hawk fan too, so I don't get it. But like, it bothers me when a guy is called a number one wide receiver and like he sucks, and he's not. And like everyone says that about Christian Watson, but this dude's always hurt. And people forget last year he had Aaron Rodgers throwing him the ball. Uh, I don't know. Like I don't think he's that good. There's 10 guys, at least, maybe 20 that I'd rather have on my team than Christian Watson. So I don't know. Is he a number one wide receiver? I guess if we took 32 number one wide receivers in the league, yeah, maybe he is, but like definitely closer to 32 than he is to one. So anyhow, guys, I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you guys for watching. Like, I really appreciate it. You guys tuning in. It really makes me feel good to get some support. I know I got a little bit of a rough start today with some technical shit going down, but listen, I appreciate you guys being in. Also, something I want to give you guys a heads up on is I'm going to be heading home in January. So I'm going to be looking to scoop up some new equipment and stuff like that, try to dress things up a little bit for the show. So you got some fun things headed down the pipeline here in terms of what we'll be doing in terms of the show, and I'm really looking forward to be able to do that for you guys. So if anything comes up, let me know. Other than that, guys, have a good rest of the day and good luck in fantasy this week.